Hey guys, welcome back to another action figure review. Taking another look at the Necronominus wave, today we're taking a look at Maxillius the Harvester. Returning back to that classic packaging, we have the entire figure out on display in this collector-friendly packaging. A small cropped version of the new Necronominus artwork is seen here at the back, along with small portraits of figures from this wave and a few short paragraphs on the lore of Mythic legions. Over on the side, we have a small card featuring a picture of Maxillius and a bit of short information written on this character. Mythic legions come in collector-friendly packaging, allowing you to remove and take the figure and accessories out without having to tear anything open. Before the Lord of Death Necronominus makes his return to Mythos, Maxillius is tasked with providing fresh bodies for his masters to resurrect into an unstoppable undead force. A legendary reaper known throughout the lands, Maxillius cannot be reasoned with. His unstoppable thirst for reaping souls is his only mission, as an unknown force only existing to kill for his master. Legions of knights have been slain by Maxillius' scythe, only for their souls to be stored in the hourglass he carries. The only warning of Maxillius you'll have is hearing the rattling of his bones he wears on his chest. Let's check out some of the details. Covered in a black hooded robe, the skeletal face has been warped into a more demonic look, featuring eye sockets that are calloused over with bone tissue. The tan-colored bone is detailed with a hollow nose, a grinning smile of teeth, and large cracks on his forehead headed towards the back. Sliding the cloth hood back exposes the rest of the skull, where we get a better look at the shape of the head, where we can see the cracks form into large plates that give the appearance of the skull cracking open. A look at the side shows off the weirdly misshapen skull of Maxillius, demonic in nature, more cracks details to the bones, and a heavy wash of tan and browns giving texture to the bone. The chest and the rest of the body is completely covered in a black hooded robe, in a thin woven fabric, with the only detail being a small tan rope tied around the waist of the figure. A decorative sculpture of bones holding up a steel ring back attachment is worn over at the back. A ribcage of an unidentifiable animal attaches to two sets of red wings, with its blood-red feathers washed in black, bringing out the details of each feather. Over at the shoulders, we get a better look at this bone sculpture, with large pelvic bones acting as the pauldrons guarding the shoulders. Over at the neck and collar is a series of jaws pointing upwards, stacked over each other forming a row of skeletal jaws. With the black robes covering up the entire arm, the only skeletal detail on the arms is the hands reaching out of the cuffs, featuring a fully skeletal hand with a slight dark wash on the sculpt. The black robes reach all the way down to the ground, with more holes and small rips and tears towards the bottom of the cloth, giving it a worn out, dragged look. The skeletal feet poke out from under the robe, with each foot having its own skeletal details sculpted for each bone. Let's take a look at the articulation. While the cloth robe is durable enough to reach the same range while worn, removing the robe of the figure lets us get a better look at the range of motion. We have the standard ball-jointed neck with the same range of motion normally seen on Mythic legions. With the new skeletal chest and neck, the neck has no rotation. We have shoulders that open and fully rotate, elbows that bend inward about 90 degrees and rotate, wrists that rotate and bend up and down. With the new skeletal bodies, the waist joint is now located at the base of the ribs, allowing a bit of range before the ribs get in the way of movement. A full skeletal pelvis means that we don't have any waist articulation, but the legs do fully open and bend forward and back. Even if the robe was still on, it will simply just move out of the way. We have knees that bend back a decent amount and rotate at this area. And once again, the skeletal thighs have no rotation. Ankles that bend up and down and rotate, and the foot that twist. Here we have Maxillius next to the Anniversary Skeleton Legion Builder. Both use the exact same parts, the only difference is the bone color. You can check out my past review of this figure to get a better comparison. Next to a 1.0 style body, Maxillius looks a lot more thin thanks to having less bulky armor. But both of these are considered 1.0 bodies and are compatible with each other, able to swap parts. Taking a look at the 2.0 style skeletons are much smaller in proportion, using a smaller head, body, and limbs these are not compatible with 1.0 style figures like Maxillius. And next we have a classic knight. The bulkiness of the classic armored look does make the normal style figures look much more chunky than the new skeletal bodies. Hasbro offers their figure in the 1/12 scale across multiple series, and while they all stay at an average of 6 inches, Mythic Legions are about a head taller, just because of how chunky the figures are. Jada Toys, while also being in that 1/12 scale, are more true to their characters' heights, having shorter characters look even more tiny, and larger figures like Bison are still shorter than Mythic Legions. McFarlane offers their figures in a unique 7-inch scale that usually makes these figures much larger than anything standard size, but thanks to how chunky Mythic Legions are, they fit in very well with each other, even if the body proportions are a bit off. Cosmic Legions are the sci-fi version of Mythic Legions, and while they are both compatible with each other, able to swap parts, Cosmic Legions are usually larger thanks to the size of the boots, chest armors, and larger helmets. What looks to be a theme in this wave is the large shoulder and neck armor attachments that attach into the 2 shoulder sockets onto the back. The robe has 2 pre-cut holes into the back to line up with the attachment. The entire piece is made of a soft plastic, so you don't have to be too careful with the small bone parts. We have an alternate head and a more standard looking skeleton skull to give it a more familiar Grim Reaper style appearance. Just like any other Mythic Legion, the 1.0 style heads fit on top of that classic ball jointed neck peg, tightly securing into place. The classic Mythic Legion skull is painted in the same tan as the rest of the body to match the rest of the figure. With its open eye sockets, grinning teeth, and cracks exposed by the dark brown wash, we have a more classic skull appearance for a Reaper. We have a large bone necklace worn on top of the chest, a large display of random tan colored bones attached to metal rings hanging down from each other. The bones are unidentifiable, and the center skull looks demonic, almost alien, with a human jaw. A real metal chain is used to wrap around the neck, and the back of the necklace is also detailed with silver rings and smaller bones. Installing the necklace, it can be placed over or under the hood, and just hangs into place on its own. We have a clear hourglass in a bronze case with its own holding handle with a short chain link. Small silver spiral pillars are on each corner with the glass frosted, obscuring vision inside. We have a classic Reaper style scythe, detailed with a brown handle and a copper and silver blade. An extra set of hands, both left and right, posed in a finger pointing gesture. Installing the hands is very easy thanks to the bulky joints. Heating up the socket allows it to pull off easy, and then you can socket in the new hands. The classic Grim Reaper look with its own unique twist and takes from Four Horsemen Studios, Maxillius the Harvester makes a great figure from its own spin on the classic look. Similar to the wizards released in the older lines, the robes that completely cover the body sort of takes away from some of the detail of the figure, as you can't really do much with cloth other than intricate patterns like the one seen on Necronominus. Except, you can't really expect that out of a Grim Reaper figure. The addition of a bone collar, shoulder blades, and that necklace add a ton of detail back into the figure, especially with that demonic face, but it starts to pull away from that classic Grim Reaper look. It was very innovating of Four Horsemen Studios to give you the options on this figure to strip him of the bone armor to get that classic Reaper look, or completely remove all of the accessories to give him a Skeleton Legion builder type figure. You do have a quite bit of options of posing value on this figure. I am really enjoying all of the unique accessories we are getting in this wave. We have come very far from the days of Mythic Legions just being color swaps. The armored collar and bone necklace all have small skeletal details that are very impressive. The scythe and hourglass have their own metallic paint that gives them a nice shine, and the use of real chains adds just that little bit of quality that gives the figure a nice premium feel. The cloth robe is easily removed, and it had its own metal wires built into the fabric at the arms and hood, letting you get just a tiny bit of more posing out of those areas. And while the cloth is very thin, enough for light to shine through for example, it feels very durable. I was never afraid to remove it from the character in fear of ripping any of the cloth. Death, the classic Grim Reaper, or even a servant of Necronominus, Maxillius the Harvester are all great options to pose this figure in. It's an absolute must-have figure for any fan of the skeletal figures of Mythic Legions. With so many ways to display this figure, there is a perfect spot for him in any collection, even if you only plan on using him as a blank skeletal body. The amount of bony detail covering this figure, iconic weapons and accessories just make this figure an amazing combination of cloth goods, sculpting, and that classic look. The range of motion is there for some dynamic poses, but honestly he's just going to be pointing from the shelf for a while on my collection. One of the best grim looking Reaper figures available, especially at the pre-order price. I don't think there's even a close comparison out there on the market for a figure of this quality for a Reaper style figure. Definitely a unique looking figure to have in your collection. You don't want to miss out on this figure, there's just so many options to pose with. Alright guys, that's it for this review. Leave a comment letting me know how you like this figure, subscribe or share this video with your friends to help out the channel.